This hairless blue rubbery cat has hentai tentacles that can kill you. And once you're dead, you will give birth to beautiful blue hairless rubbery cat babies. Today we're talking about the Akata. Hello everyone, welcome to the Maple Table. My name's Nathaniel. This is a channel where we discuss lore around some of your favorite role-playing games such as Starfinder, Werewolf the Apocalypse. If that's something you're interested in, I would love to have you join me at the table, and you can do so by hitting the subscribe button with the bell notification. Because there's so many articles online and there's so much access to information around the Akata and its stat blocks, I'm not going to talk about the stat blocks. I am going to tell you a little bit about the Akata, where it comes from, why it does what it does, and how it does what it does, some interesting points of information, and then at the end I will give you my thoughts and hopefully some creative ways to use an Akata in your game. If you are one of the players in my group, this is spoilers for you. Akatas are communal creatures. They do live in colonies of up to 30 members, and the largest ones of them are known as the Akata Alpha. And as typical with any alpha of any animal pack, they rule the whole colony. The Akata colonies are typically set up, or they have them established in asteroids. There is some good reason for this. Asteroids and rocks, they tend to fly around, they bump into each other, and then they hurtle off into space. What this can do for the Akata is hurl a meteorite or an asteroid onto a planet that doesn't know what's in it, and bad news bears for the planet, I guess. Akatas can survive for centuries, and I mean centuries without food. So the black, dark depths of space is the perfect place for them to hibernate. When an Akata goes into hibernation, it surrounds itself in a resin that's known as noquel. Noquel is actually quite expensive. After a meteorite carrying a bunch of Akata cocoons, it's just fun to say, Akata cocoons. After it strikes the planet, the Akata will emerge from its chrysalis, and it will eat this shell for its first meal, and then it goes off searching for other meals. If you're looking for a little bit more information on noquel, please check out the Starfinder Armory on page 64. As you may or may not have guessed, Akata can really reduce the population on a planet. What makes these creatures so scary is the fact that they live in space. It's really hard to kill them. They're rumored to come from the Dark Tapestry, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. When an Akata comes out of its shell, it does look a little bit like a lion, except it's blue, it's hairless, and its mane is actually tentacles. On its face, if you can make out any facial features, they will have two glowing eyes, and these eyes can shift to a very broad spectrum of colors depending on its mood. It also has teeth, like a lot of teeth. Akata are not particularly tall either. They stand about 3.5 feet or 106 centimeters. They also weigh about 400 pounds, and that's 181 kilograms, so they are dense. Another reason that the Akata can live so long in the void of space is because they have no lungs. They also don't have ears, and they don't have vocal cords. They are a creature that cannot hear, and they cannot vocalize in any way. But the way that they communicate is not telepathically. They do communicate through body language and through the way the colors of the eyes shift. They can also communicate through scent. There's two scent glands that would be just kind of on the back of the jaw, and that's how they secrete a smell, and that smell allows them to communicate with other Akata. And Akatas can taste these smells with their tongue. It's a little weird, but that's how it works. For all their various elemental resistances, Akata actually do have a weak spot. They don't like salt water. That's not going to do you a lot of good when you're in the blackness of space. Maybe if you were fighting some planetside, that could be useful, but yeah, they don't like salt water, apparently. Now, I did mention a little earlier about the Dark Tapestry, and this is the spot where the Akata are rumored to come from. Now, the Dark Tapestry is supposed to be the place between stars. It's the section of space that you can't see. There's no light there. It's also rumored that this is where the old gods make their home. This is where they live. And there's a dark cult that lives in this area as well. They call themselves Dominion of the Black. Honestly, not much is known about this section of space. I don't think it was very well covered in Pathfinder. There is a little bit more information on the Pathfinder setting when it comes to the Dark Tapestry. When it comes to Starfinder, there is nothing, so I would presume that it would function exactly the same, because when you're dealing with that elder mythos, time just doesn't really mean anything to them. And it's always fun to have your eldritch horror stories, because you can do that in space. So if the Akata are always eating their food, going to a planet, and just destroying the entire population because they're using them for food, how does the Akata reproduce? The way they do this is through their teeth. When they bite you, they inject little larvae from their teeth into the host of the thing that they've just bitten. It's horrifying. And it's really rather unpleasant because it causes an effect called void death. If you don't get it treated, you will die. Basically what happens is the larvae are inside, they are eating you, it kills you because it's pretty toxic and not good for you. If you happen to die under the effects of void death, your character, well, they will become what is known as a void zombie. Basically, all those little larvae that were swimming around inside of you, one of them's going to win. It latches onto your brainstem, it grows because it's been feeding on you and will continue to feed on you. Your jaw will basically disintegrate or break off because the larva will start coming out your mouth, and it will look a little bit like a tongue, but it's really the butt of the larva. It's a larva butt tongue. This process will take approximately 2d4 hours to complete. Now, as long as the larva is attached to its host, it will continue to feed, it will continue to grow. Don't get hit by the butt tongue. It does some really horrible stuff if you get hit with this attack. Like strength drain. This is a thing that the butt tongue can do. After 1d4 weeks, that is how long it will take the larva to detach itself from the host zombie and turn into a full-fledged Akata, or at least close to. After it is detached from the zombie host, it goes to find a dark place to make its little chrysalis shell, that no-quill shell. And finally, after 2d6 hours, it will emerge from that shell as a full-fledged Akata. And then it eats the shell, and then it goes off and bites somebody else or feeds on them, and the whole process continues. So you can really see quickly how a planet could get overrun very, very fast. So what are my thoughts on the Akata, and how would I use them in a game? I should start off by saying that I love the Akata. It is a horrifying monster, and I'm throwing a bunch of them at my players now, and I love it. I don't think they love it, but I love it. For creatures, this sort of hits all the right notes for me. The history of it, where it comes from, how it functions, the abilities that you can use to attack your players with. There's some decent ones in there, and they hit really hard, so be careful. It is a CR1 creature, but it is very easy to overdo it. These would be perfect monsters to run a horror-style game or any sort of horror-style setting. You can really get that alien vibe with it because you have these eggs all over the place, as long as you're monitoring that, your players aren't grabbing up all the pieces of egg to sell. You can use it for aesthetic purposes. Just make sure you're watching that as a GM. If you wanted to have a bit of a different flair, you can have a planet-killing event. A meteor lands in one section of the world, and suddenly these Akata are everywhere, and people are dying, and the planet is being overrun. You can really have a Zerg StarCraft kind of feel to this, and that's one way you could go about doing this as well. If you're more into the eldritch horror and working in some stories around the old gods, then totally you can use these guys as an entry-level creature and scale them up a little bit as your players advance in levels. Let me know in the comments below if you found this useful, and if you want to see some encounter building videos around the Akata, or maybe even some of the other monsters. And speaking of heroes who would save the planet from destruction, my patrons. Autumn Alchemist, Cane Root, Warpony, Ducky, Get of Mathrox, B.A. Bravo, Arutvin, The First Layer, Bones Malone, Westheimer, and Ain't No Waifu. Thank you all for your support. If you would like to join them on that list, then please check out the link to Patreon in the description. Today was something a little different. If you liked it, let me know by hitting the thumbs up button. If you want to know a little bit more about Starfinder and the Pact Worlds, then please check out the playlist that is on your screen now. My name's Nathaniel. This has been The Maple Table. Thanks for stopping by, everyone.